The old lighthouse keeper Silas had seen his share of strange things in his 50 years on this isolated rock. Storms that raged like demons, ships swallowed by the sea, and the silent, watchful eyes of the ocean itself. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare him for the 10 encounters that would etch themselves into his mind, whispers of the unnatural that haunted his waking hours and his dreams. It all began on a night when the fog rolled in thicker than usual, a suffocating blanket that muffled the usual roar of the waves and swallowed the light from his tower. He was polishing the lens, the familiar rhythm a comfort against the oppressive silence, when he heard it. A soft, rhythmic scraping from the rocks below, a sound that was too deliberate for the tide, too heavy for a seabird. He peered through the thick glass, but the fog was a wall. Then, a shadow detached itself from the gray. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to glide rather than walk. Its limbs were too long, too jointed, and it moved with a sickeningly unnatural grace. It reached the base of the lighthouse and began to ascend, not climbing, but seeming to melt up the sheer rock face. Silas's blood ran cold. He'd seen seals, gulls, even the occasional lost sailor, but this was not of this world. The shadow paused at his level, a dark silhouette against the even darker fog, and for a moment, Silas felt a pair of eyes, vast and ancient, bore into his very soul. Then, as silently as it appeared, it melted back into the mist. That was the first. The second encounter happened a week later, a clear, star-dusted night, the sea a mirror. Silas was enjoying a rare moment of peace on the gallery, a cup of steaming tea in his hands. Then, the water below began to churn, not with waves, but with an internal agitation. A phosphorescent glow bloomed beneath the surface, illuminating a shape that defied description. It was a colossal eye, larger than his entire lantern room, a swirling nebula of emerald and sapphire, blinking slowly, deliberately at the lighthouse. It held an intelligence, an awareness that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The eye remained for a full minute, a silent, cosmic observer, before it slowly submerged, leaving the sea once more placid and undisturbed. Silas dropped his teacup, the porcelain shattering on the stone floor, the sound lost in the vastness of the night. The third was more insidious. A peculiar musical humming began to emanate from the rocks during low tide. It wasn't the wind nor the sea. It was a complex melody, shifting and weaving, full of notes that seemed to vibrate not in his ears, but in his bones. He investigated, venturing onto the tide pools, and found the source. Small, iridescent pebbles, scattered amongst the seaweed, were pulsing with a faint light, each one emitting a single pure tone that combined to form the unsettling symphony. As he reached for one, it skittered away with impossible speed, diving into a crevice. He could feel the song trying to burrow into his mind, a siren call that promised forgotten knowledge, but also oblivion. The fourth occurrence involved a flock of birds, unlike any Silas had ever seen. They arrived at dawn, their wingspans immense, their feathers a shimmering obsidian. They flew in perfect formation, not a single beat out of sync, and their calls were not the squawks of gulls, but a series of guttural clicks and whistles that seemed to carry a hidden language. They circled the lighthouse thrice, their dark forms casting a fleeting shadow, before veering off towards the open sea, disappearing as abruptly as they had arrived. Silas felt a profound sense of unease, as if he had witnessed a celestial procession of some unknown ancient order. The fifth was a solitary visitor. One night, as he was about to extinguish the lamp, a large, shadowy figure appeared in the doorway of the lantern room. It was hunched, with long, spindly arms that brushed the floor, and its head was tilted at an unnatural angle. Silas could not discern any features, only a void where a face should be. The figure made no sound, no threat. It simply stood there, observing him. Silas, frozen in terror, could only stare back. After what felt like an eternity, the figure slowly, deliberately, raised one of its elongated hands and pointed towards the sea. Then it turned and vanished, leaving Silas alone with the echoing silence and the persistent thrumming in his chest. The sixth encounter was in the form of a scent, a sweet, cloying aroma, like decaying flowers mixed with ozone, began to permeate the lighthouse. It was strongest near the old storage room, a place he rarely ventured. Driven by a morbid curiosity, Silas finally opened the door. The air inside was thick, almost viscous, and the scent was overpowering. Floating in the center of the room, bathed in an ethereal, sickly green light, was a pulsating mass of what looked like tangled, luminous roots. It seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with a slow, rhythmic pulse, and the sweet, foul scent emanated from it. He slammed the door shut, his hands trembling, the image seared into his vision. The seventh event was a disembodied voice. It wasn't spoken aloud, but it resonated directly within his mind. A gentle, melancholic whisper that spoke of forgotten things, of sunken cities and stars that had long since died. It called his name, Silas, not with malice, but with a profound sadness, a longing for something lost. He tried to block it out, to focus on the rhythmic sweep of the light, but the voice persisted, a constant, mournful echo in the vast emptiness of his consciousness. The eighth encounter was more tangible, yet equally inexplicable. One morning, he found a perfect, crystalline sphere resting on his breakfast table. It was cool to the touch, and within its depths, miniature galaxies swirled and danced. It pulsed with a faint inner light, and when Silas held it to his ear, he could hear the faint, distant echo of the musical humming from the tide pools. He tried to move it, but it seemed rooted to the table, as if it had grown there. He eventually left it, a beautiful, terrifying enigma, a gift from the unknown. The ninth time, it was a change in the very fabric of reality around him. For a brief, terrifying moment, the sea outside the lighthouse seemed to fold in on itself, creating a vortex of impossible colors and shifting geometries. The sky warped, stars streaking across it like shattered glass. It was a glimpse into a dimension that should not exist, a place where the rules of physics were rewritten by something ancient and incomprehensible. The vision lasted only seconds, but it left Silas feeling utterly insignificant, a speck of dust in a cosmos far grander and more terrifying than he had ever imagined. And then, the 10th. It was the night he decided he could stay no longer. He packed his meager belongings, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and a desperate longing for normalcy. As he stepped out onto the gallery, the fog had returned, thicker than ever. But this time it wasn't empty. Emerging from the swirling gray was not one shadow, but many. They were the same impossibly thin, unnaturally graceful figures he had seen on his first night. They moved with silent purpose, their formless shapes coalescing and dissolving in the mist. They didn't approach, they simply surrounded the lighthouse, a silent, sentient perimeter. Silas could feel their collective gaze, a weight pressing down on him, on the very rock beneath his feet. He saw, or perhaps felt, the colossal eye from the second encounter rise from the depths, its luminous gaze fixed upon the lighthouse, upon him. The humming returned, louder now, a symphony of discordant notes that vibrated through the stone, through his teeth, through his very bones. He heard the voice again, a chorus of whispers, not sad this time, but expectant, inviting. He saw the dark, winged shapes, the birds in the distance, circling the island like omens. The sweet floral scent filled his lungs, making him dizzy. He held the crystalline sphere he had taken from his table, and within it, the swirling galaxy seemed to spin faster, the light intensifying. The world outside the lighthouse was no longer just fog and sea. It was a canvas for unimaginable horrors, a stage for beings that defied understanding. He turned back into the lighthouse, not to flee, but to face the inevitable. He climbed the stairs to the lantern room, the light that had been his sole companion for decades now, seeming like a feeble beacon against the encroaching darkness. He looked out at the swirling mass of entities, at the glowing eye, at the warped sky. He felt no fear, only a profound, overwhelming curiosity. He understood then that these were not just random encounters, they were visits. He was being observed, he was being studied, he was being welcomed. The lighthouse, his solitary post, was not just a beacon for ships, it was a gateway. And on that night, the gates had swung wide open. He raised his hands, not in defense, but in surrender. The light from the lantern room swept across the water, illuminating the unholy tableau. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, he didn't fight the whispers, the humming, the scent. He embraced them. The sounds intensified, the light within the sphere pulsed in sync with the colossal eye, and the shadows began to creep closer, their formless tendrils reaching for the man who had spent a lifetime guarding a solitary light, only to discover the true nature of the darkness that lay beyond it.